What a rewrite of history that is. I think he's got mixed up with Muldoon. We're at the end of the Muldoon era, where we're in such trouble that public servants had to go out and put stuff on their credit cards. We were so hard up. And as for Ruth Richardson, goodness me, it took until the Labor government to get unemployment down to the level it was. What a rewrite of history. But Mr. Speaker, let's start with this. I would like to start with a very short quiz. Who said, and I quote, "National is not going to raise GST"? Who said this? John Key. Right. In fact, the people of New Zealand voted for no increase in GST because this is what John Key explicitly told them. National is not going to raise GST. Well, Mr. Key and Mr. English are National, and they are going to raise GST. And it annoys the hell out of New Zealanders that these senior politicians could be so disingenuous as to promise one thing and deliver another. The Prime Minister promised no GST increases, and yet New Zealanders are going to get them. That, Mr. Speaker, is simply not fair. That is called a broken promise. But my question is, why would you raise GST? And that is a rhetorical question because there is no right answer. Let me give you the facts. Mr. Key and Mr. English have said that New Zealand taxes consumption at a relatively low rate. The coverage of our GST system is comprehensive, from avocados to zinc and everything in between. As a result, New Zealand has the 6th highest level of general consumption taxation as a proportion of GST out of the 30 OECD countries. The OECD stated in its 2000 edition of Revenue Statistics that, and I quote, "There has not been any general trend in OECD countries from direct to indirect taxation. Over the past 40 years, the general trend away from indirect taxes has been so strong that only 6 countries, Luxembourg, Mexico, the Netherlands, New Zealand, Poland, and the Slovak Republic, escaped it. In fact, only Iceland, Ireland, Portugal, and the Slovak Republic had a higher percentage of their total tax take from consumption taxes. Yes, we have a comprehensive GST. And I asked the Maori Party if they were going to support a budget and a government that increases the rate on GST when they have a private member's bill proposing to cut GST on food. Where do they stand on this issue of general increase of GST? I say to Rahui Katani, stand by your principles and don't support this budget of broken promises. Mr. Speaker, I would like to ask Mr. Key and Mr. English if they had read the research from a Conservative UK think tank that found increases in consumption tax like GST, and I quote, would be more damaging to economic growth than increases in base of income tax. I would also like to ask the Minister of Finance, what will he say to the 19% of SMEs surveyed by the Herald who believe that any increase in GST will seriously reduce sales, while another 41% think it will have a minor impact. That is 60% of businesses polled by the Herald who believe that an increase in GST will hurt their businesses. Of these companies, just over 56 of them were opposed to any increase in GST, and of those, 32% were strongly opposed to an increase in GST. So not only are the people of this country opposed to an increase in GST, but over half the businesses also. And another scary piece of information for Kiwis. The polling went on to say, and I quote, while all firms plan to review their prices, 34.9% envisage that an increase of more than the GST increase of 2.5%, and nearly 11% plan to increase of more than 5%. Mark my words. If the government thought that this would be nice and simple transition, then they are being naive. What is the government going to do to ensure that New Zealanders aren't ripped off? I'll tell you what, nothing. Do you know why? Because unless someone earns above the top marginal tax rate, the government doesn't care. And we've seen that proven in the House today when the government has said they will not back Darian Fenton's redundancy bill. That is the law in Australia. We can keep comparing ourselves to Australia. Well, if you want to compare yourself to Australia, back Ms Fenton's bill.
Ko hiki a parata.